Hey, and good afternoon, everybody. It's Friday. It's 4 p.m., so it must be Main Street. Gary Allen with you. And I just want to let you know Jeffrey Mark is going to be sitting in for me the next 2 weeks. Finally, all the dental work, the oral surgery is going to be done, and I just need 2 weeks to recuperate, and then I'll be back with you. I'm not really looking forward to it, but it's something that has to be done. So please excuse my look right now. My producer, Tom Bannis, says I look better this way than I do having the mask on. Anyway, welcome to Main Street. I hope you had a wonderful time since our last visit last Friday. I hope you guys are safe and sound. And for those of you that'll be watching this in New Jersey, I hope you got through the storm okay, and I hope you're recovering well. Please, we're all saying our prayers out for you. I have some friends that were caught in that too. So please, like I said, if you're watching this show, I hope to God that you're okay and you're going to be great. All right, let's get on with today's program. I have an interesting guest. His name is John Korbel. John is a singer, songwriter, band leader, composer, pianist. He's from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, so he's one of my guys. He has a couple of CDs out, which we're going to talk about, Bourbon Street Taps and Miss the Mystery. We're going to show some CDs about that. And the best way that I can describe John's music to you as a jazz singer, pianist, and artist is you put on a CD, you grab yourself your favorite beverage, wine, liqueur, whatever, and you just sit back, and it's like you're listening to an old friend talking to you through his music. He uses a lot of different flavors from different cultural backgrounds for layering of his music. He's a fantastic artist. I'm so happy to bring him on board this program. He'll be back with us, I'm sure, at some point with other projects. So without further ado, singer, songwriter, pianist, band singer, you name it, the Philadelphia Flash, Mr. John Korbel.
Gary, thanks so much for that intro, man. That was, wow, is that me?
Yeah. Well, listen, we can't cue it up, but I have Ray Abruzzo has done my show, my late night show that I used to have, and other shows. Mm-hmm. And I gave him a fabulous introduction. And he goes, he off camera, it's like, this is him now. This is him. And he goes, who am I talking to? Gary who? Gary who? And I've known Abruzzo.
I promise not to do that to you.
No, and I've known Abruzzo for 25 years. I mean, we've acted together when I lived in Los Angeles many, many years ago. John, welcome to Main Street. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. I didn't know. Maybe we discussed it at one point, but I didn't realize you were from Philadelphia.
Originally, yeah, was there through the 1980s.
I left Wilkes-Barre, where I'm from, in 1964. Mm-hmm. Went back in 1971 after my first tour in Southeast Asia. And frankly, it hadn't changed at all. I mean, except the kids are older and they're all graduated from high school by then. But, and I was really shocked at how it hadn't changed or anything. And I mean, someone once said, you can't go home again, but by going back there, it sort of settled some of the uncertainty things about my life living in Wilkes-Barre. We were very poor. As you well know, Wilkes-Barre is not a rich place. Everybody's kind of on the middle to poor class side. And I lived with an aunt and uncle for a number of years. But I relished the time in Philadelphia.
It's a great city.
Or Wilkes-Barre, rather, excuse me. Well, yeah. I relished the time in Wilkes-Barre. I've spent some time in Philadelphia when I went down to see the Phillies play. As an adult, I've gone there. Bobby Rydell and I have been to a few ball games in the past. But what made you decide to get involved in show business? I mean, I've always been curious why a singer, and now I know you started out in Philadelphia, you got some breaks there, and the person that introduced you to the business, have you tracked them down and shot them yet?
I think my beginnings with it are not uncommon to other people that do it. I was involved with different music in school. I took music lessons as a little kid. I got into the school musicals and stuff, and then when I went to college, I had friends in high school, and we would play folk songs and stuff like that together. My guitar playing got started then. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really till I got into college that I started knocking around with like really, rock and roll bands and playing really in front of people and bars and the whole bit. And when I finished college, I went back to Philadelphia and started knocking around the clubs there, and it just kind of sustained itself there.
Did you get involved with a number of my male guests over the years and people that I know that are comedians and actors, etc. And I got involved in the drama club in high school too, what there was of it.
Yeah.
And I did it because that's where all the chicks were. That's where all the girls were.
I guess that's always part of it. Yeah.
I mean, I had an uncle that was in the business. I had no inclination to really go into show business. Never thought I would end up where I am. I thought I would be piloting an airliner for my life, go in the Air Force, come out, boom, 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 join one of the airlines. So did you always know, as growing up as a youngster, were you like on the street corner with your friends singing, or were you singing to the radio as your mom and dad drove around in the car? I mean, what gave you the idea?
I think as a little kid, it was stirring.
Mm-hmm.
I used to listen to the radio in the house with my mom, and I remember a lot of that kind of pre-rock and roll 50s and 60s pop music that we used to have around the house then. And, and then, of course, the Beatles came along and changed everything. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that I didn't really get a sense of how to go about it until I was, like I said, and I was out of college by then. But as far as, having the inclination in my head, sure, ever since I was a little kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, who were your inspirations? I mean, you mentioned the Beatles, and we're going to talk about the fact that you worked with the Blood, Sweat, and Tears and other groups over the years. But who were your inspirations when you first got started, like actors and singers and stuff? You see this person perform, you see this person perform, you take a little here, a little there, and then eventually you do find your own voice. Who were the people that their music resonated with you, and you kind of started doing that? I mean, did you do cover work a lot?
Oh yeah. Well, I think the early influences, besides the Beatles and a lot of the rock stuff. I mean, I love Frank Sinatra, and along the way, some of the other Rat Pack guys, like Dean Martin and all that. But Sinatra was an artist that really is so one of a kind and so distinctive, and he was so masterful at everything he did that and then in addition to that, he surrounded himself with the best arrangers, the best session players, and all of that. So everything was done just impeccably. And so I honor that as something to aspire to.
I once had the privilege, and I got to know Frank and Dean and Sammy through my uncle. And I asked Frank once, although I called him Mr. Sinatra, I was just a youngster. I said, what is it about your singing? What do you do that separates you from everybody else? Maybe back then I knew I was going to be a talk show host. I don't know. But I said, there's something different about what you do and what Dean does and what Sammy does. And they all said the same thing, though. As a singer, I take the words on the paper, I bring life to them like most singers do, but it's phrasing. It's understanding what you're singing. You can get up and sing the Star Spangled Banner. Anybody can. But then there's that person that comes across singing it that just brings you to tears. I think with Frank, it was phrasing. And I know with you do a lot of layered things with you. You're a storyteller. And I think Frank was kind of a storyteller, because that's what music is. It's a story. It's supposed to comfort you. It's like comfort food. It's comfort music.
Yeah.
So I think that is part of what Frank Sinatra was successful at, and
I think that if you take, within my influences and everything, if you take that and then you add that to the other, some of the other performers that inspire me, I'm a huge Steely Dan fan, Donald Fagen.
Hmm.
is incredible. I was a big fan for a long time, and even now, of Gino Vanelli. I think his voice
Oh,
is just amazing. I'm a huge fan now, in more recent years, of Kurt Elling. If you follow him in jazz, he is a master of what they call vocalese, where they take, say, a Charlie Parker instrumental, a sax solo, and put lyricism to it, and voice it out as a vocalist. And it's
right.
what Kurt Elling does lyrically with some of that stuff is just, it's just blinding. It's great.
Yeah.
And so there's so much that I've been able to absorb, over all these years, that I try to incorporate, a bit of this and a bit of that into everything that I do, as much as I possibly can. And there's all kinds of folk and rock roots that are mixed into some of my stuff too. So it's just a real salad.
But you were, yeah. As a matter of fact, you mentioned something that brings back memories for me. Have you listened to Gino's "Powerful People" album?
Yeah, that's one of the early ones. Yeah,
Oh,
very early one.
and that song "Powerful People" could really resonate today.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it can't. He was he was great. I think Gino's still alive. His
Oh
brother,
God, he's still performing. Oh, he's doing great. Yeah.
his brother went to the University of Miami where I went, and
Was that Ross or Joe?
I can't.
The
I didn't
piano
know
player
them.
was Ross, or no, the piano player was his brother Joe, and then Ross is, I think, the younger brother who played guitar and was also, actually, his brother Ross wrote the biggest hit. He wrote "I Just Want to Stop."
Yes, which was an absolutely great song. Here's something before we get into your days in Philadelphia, because I want to talk about your breaks and your singing with the Jelly Roll, and which I think is absolutely a great name for a group.
Oh,
Why you've traveled the world with your songs and as a jazz aficionado? Why do you think that jazz is more appreciated in Europe and throughout the world than it is where it was created right here in the United States?
I think you could probably do a whole hour on that subject,
Yeah.
Gary. My sense of it is, first off, going back to the early jazz age, in the 20s and the 30s and all that, particularly in Paris, you had an acceptability of the African American performers and musicians there, that you didn't always have in the States. And it's a sad commentary on our society that that's the way it was. But I mean, all through the years, the black jazz artists have always gone over there and been just, worshipped.
They kill.
Yeah. And, Miles Davis used to talk about that a lot, how he would go over there and just feel like a king, and
just so long as you
had a comfort level there that he couldn't experience in his own country. And that was, I think,
just so long as you don't listen to Bitches Brew, you're okay. If you listen to that CD, oh, come on. I mean, sober, straight. I've listened to that thing a million, and I love Miles Davis. I love Miles Davis, like Chet Baker. I love that. But even friends of mine who are major jazz aficionados, I mean, they're not artists. But they go when you hear Bitches Brew, all they did was go in the studio. They had a session and they riffed. That's really it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like all those guys, he didn't want to stand still. That he wanted to go to the next thing, and that's what I think that's all about. And I mean, if it's not to your taste, it's not to your taste. That's fine. But,
I love all this stuff, but
and I'm the earlier records, of course, are just monumental. People are going to be listening to that stuff, all of his stuff, for hundreds of years.
Music, great music is like a friend of mine who used to make my suits for me in Vegas when I was performing. He said, good music is like a good suit. If it's a good suit, it'll last for 100 years. And I said, well, I don't know, something like that. You were talking about the black artists going to Europe, like Muddy Waters and B.B. King.
All the blues.
All the blues guys.
Influenced all the British rock guys.
The Rolling Stones came to Chicago just to see the blues and the jazz artists. Yep. The Beatles took from over here and implemented it over here on their records. And people don't realize that the jazz is a major force in music, whether it be rock and roll or otherwise. It's just, but I've never quite, I mean, you've put it succinctly, but it's just a shame that a genre of music that was created, which it came from basically Bourbon Street blues and stuff like that in New Orleans. That's where jazz basically came from, and the artists moved north and took it with them. It's just a shame that in a country like ours, we don't appreciate what is homegrown right here, what began here. It just drives me crazy. Let's get back to Philadelphia. You had some major breaks. You sang on a song. Well, you actually composed it. Don't You Love It to Play?
Don't You Love to Play? Right. Okay.
Yeah, Don't You Love to Play?
A little background on that. After, and this is kind of this is your life stuff again.
Yeah.
I got back to Philly after college. I was working little bars, coffee houses, anything I could get, just as a solo guy. I started to meet other musicians. I met a few really great players, and I also had a friend that was building a little basement 8-track recording studio who wanted to use me and my friends as a guinea pig and test out his studio and kind of learn the ropes of his equipment. So we got a lot of free studio time, and we recorded a bunch of tracks, and one of those was a song called Don't You Love to Play. And at the time, the big radio station in Philadelphia, WMMR, was putting together sort of a compilation album, sort of a band contest thing of local acts that they put together an album that was put out on Chrysalis Records. And it was the 10 top entries that they received from all the different local bands in Philly, and we were fortunate enough to have Don't You Love to Play appear on that. And as a result of being first off, one of the selected bands, and then also being available for performing, WMMR during the course of a year or so there did a lot of promotion with us, and we were able to play in a lot of really great settings, both outdoor concerts and other shows that we did with their sponsorship, and it helped develop my name and the band name and all that. So it was really pretty fortunate.
Well, and I would imagine a lot of that experience has moved into the current music that you're doing, because what happens in your past generally moves through what you're currently doing and how you're writing and your style. It's too bad you didn't grow up in the Bobby Rydell era and Frankie Avalon era, because you had American Bandstand right there.
Sure. I was a little kid coming home from school. It was on because Dick Clark was still local then in Philly.
Yeah, and no matter what, Bobby says, hey, if it wasn't for Dick Clark, we might not have had the success that we had.
Oh, absolutely. He made so many careers on that show.
Oh, he absolutely did. Philadelphia's a great town for music. I mean, Bobby used to tell stories about guys standing on the street corners singing doo-wop music and stuff like that.
Funny story. If you're familiar with the quintessential Philly movie Rocky.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a one shot of Rocky walking up the street, and there are a bunch of guys standing around a barrel with a fire in it going, singing doo-wop. And I knew a couple of the guys that were in that shot. They were in another band that we used to work with near Philly. And actually, one of the guys in that shot is Sylvester Stallone's brother, Frank Stallone.
Frankie,
had the band that all those other guys that I knew. I've never met Frank, but I knew a couple of the other guys that were in that shot.
I went to college with Sly.
Wow.
I mean, I was just out of the Air Force, and it was my first year at the U, and it was his last year, running out of money, sleeping in people's closets and auditing classes and trying to gather all he could. And then the school finally said, Mr. Stallone, it's time for you to, and then he moved to New York, and I didn't see him again until I moved to Las Vegas, when he was doing Rocky 29 in a wheelchair or something like that. I can't remember exactly, everything like that. What did Philadelphia give you besides a few opportunities and some breaks and writing some music? I know.
Well, at the time that I was the most active there into the 80s, the music scene there was just fantastic. there was, of course, the Kings of the Hill at the time was a band called the Hooters that had a number of big hits in the 80s, and they were, they were still playing some of the same clubs that we were playing with Jelly Roll at that point. And so we had some terrific venues. We were able to get in front of large audiences as a result of that. And it was, I think, having a schedule and having, to grind out show after show is what I think is something that, bands now have a hard time getting a chance to do, because, the venues will do 2 and 3 bands a night, and you don't get to play for very long. You don't get to play as often as you're coming up. And I think that scene in Philly back then gave me the kind of the work ethic in terms of doing all the gigs and doing all the other things that we were working on, and projects, recording, and all that. So it was a real good training ground, I guess, for that.
You did a number of USO shows, and you also wrote a song, "Standing Tall for America." Where did that inspiration come from?
Well, that was, as you know, after Vietnam, the troops came back, and it was a pretty ugly situation for them to enter, and they were really
I can attest to that.
Disrespected horribly. And so at the time of Desert Storm, the original Gulf War, when it looked like we were, getting ready to send guys out again, I started to write the initial version of that song. And then when 9/11 came, I had the impetus to finish it and put it back out as Standing Tall for America, and we got a little bit of airplay with it, and it was kind of cathartic for me and everybody that helped with it, to just be able to do something, that talked about how we felt. So
how was it entertaining the troops? As a former Air Force veteran, Vietnam veteran, I know what it was like to have entertainment to come to us.
Yeah, I was working with bands out of Orlando by that point, and we used to work the NCO clubs at some of the big Army bases. We were at Fort Benning and Fort Bragg, and right as they were starting to send troops out to the first Gulf War was when that was happening. And it was it was fun, because these were not, a lot of the people that were there, were not, they were reservists. They were people that were coming off of their regular day jobs.
Yeah.
And because they were in the National Guard or the reserves or whatever, they were having to, stop what they were doing and interrupt their lives to go do service to the country. And so that getting to perform for some of them, and getting to know them personally, and some of the stories, was really nice, because after things wrapped up and the troops came back, we were doing a club gig in Birmingham, Alabama, and a bunch of these Alabama National Guard people that had seen us at Fort Benning all showed up at the club.
Oh, that's cool.
Instead of us welcoming them back, it was like they were welcoming us to Alabama. So
that's great.
So I mean, you get into a situation like that where you make a connection with people, and then it's a strong enough connection that they make an effort to come back out and see you at some nightclub. I mean, it was very gratifying.
You're listening to Mainstreet with John Korbel, who's a singer, songwriter, pianist, composer, and a real great jazz music artist. We're going to show some of his CDs here in just a little bit. Gary Allen with you, as I am, every Friday at 4 p.m. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And, we always look forward to having you always join us on Fridays. Where did the name Jelly Roll come from? I mean, I'm just kind of curious.
Oh, okay. First off, I was not a founding member of Jelly Roll. There had been a couple of singers that were in the band before I was in it, briefly. And as I understand it, if you're familiar with the music of Van Morrison, there's a song called Stone Me. Stone me to my soul, stone me just like Jelly Roll. That's where the name comes from.
No, my sister liked Van Morrison. I really wasn't a big Van
Yeah.
Morrison fan per se.
Well, we used to cover some Van Morrison and Jelly Roll, and it was a big influence on the beginning of the band for sure. And Jelly Roll, I should mention, is still together, still performing all the time. They're one of the most established show bands, I guess you might say, in the Philadelphia market there, and still very successful.
If you want to contact John, by the way, I just want to let everybody know that it's johnkorbel.com, where you can find about where he's performing. You can find out all about the LPs and CDs that he has. Like I said, we're going to talk about those in just a little bit. As I said at the beginning of the program, you are a storyteller. You are noted for being a storyteller. And some of the stuff that you, and I've listened to some of your music, really touches some interesting subjects. Talk about that, and what is it that you feel as you're writing, and where does your inspiration come from as you're just going around day to day from point A to point B, or do you see something on TV and you say, I've got to make a statement here?
Well, Gary, it's kind of all of the above. I don't. If I had a good understanding of how it happens, I would just tap into it all day, every day, and be writing thousands of songs. But it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Sometimes it starts with a phrase or two. Most of my stuff originates lyrically. I'll work on a set of lyrics and then start to construct the music based on what I'm doing lyrically. On rare occasions, it's the other way around, where I'll have some musical phrases that I'll say, "Ooh, this is sweet." What would go with that lyrically? But really, more often than not, I'm really a word guy. I start with my lyrics and build the music around that. So it's and as far as subject matter, I have my share of love songs, but even those, thematically, I want them to have a little bit of a different twist.
Yeah.
And a different basis.
Yeah, exactly. When you're writing, and I've always wanted to ask a writer this, a songwriter, composer, when do you know, okay, that's enough? If I go any further, it's gonna ruin what I've been writing. And when is it sort of like pushing away from the dinner table? You just gotta say, okay, that's it. I can't play with this
for the
anymore.
most part, because it's pop music, it's in its roots, I guess. There are certain kind of accepted structures and forms that you sort of guide yourself with, and you don't go beyond it in terms of the length of the song or whatever, unless unless you're really want to go over outside the lines a little bit. But for me, I use a fairly straightforward song structure, and I know what the song structure is going to be as I get into it, so I know where the beginning and the end is on it.
All right.
And
All right. Does it take, like with a writer, with an author, they're married to that subject matter that they're writing about. Does that happen with you as a composer, songwriter?
If I understand what you're asking, I'll go through a phase where I'm working on something where it will be in my head all day, every day, and I'll be running it through my brain. And as I do that, I'll think of tweaks, that I'll make along the way, and little changes, a lyrical change to maybe make what I'm trying to say a little clearer, come up with something musical that'll give it a little bit more of an impact. There's a whole process that takes place. It's I try and not just dash right in and record something when it's too fresh, because as time goes on, even with the records that I've got out, after a while I think, oh, I should have done a little stop there, or added a
Yeah.
change here to bring it up or whatever. So, you know, you're always, so you want to give it some time to gel and some time to, uh, you know, for you to think of all these different subtle things that you want to add and change for impact. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, because I've heard from, I hear from actors that'll say, no, I never watch my stuff, because if I watch myself, then I'm going to correct myself, and whatever I'm doing right, I'm going to suddenly start doing wrong. But that also brings up, that also conjures up what I've heard from musicians and writers, that you know, I just want to be satisfied with that and let it go. It went its course. It was a hit, but you're never satisfied.
That I can agree with that. You're always going to be self-critical, I think, if you really are taking yourself seriously enough. So
yeah, we're gonna show this Bourbon Street Taps, but before we get to that, you're listening to Main Street. John Korbel is my guest. Gary Allen with you, as I am every Friday at 4. John, where did the Bourbon Street Taps, this video that we're about to watch, which has an opening scene of a young lady walking down, and all you see is her legs and stuff like that. Take us through that process, and then the music begins.
The first time that I visited New Orleans, I was 16 years old. I have held a fascination for the place ever since, and have made many subsequent visits there and partied there, and had always had a wonderful time. And there's so much culturally there that's just so different from really any place else in America, and really any place else in the world. It's just really remarkable. And it's so on one of my visits, we were in the French Quarter, just kind of touristing around, walking and doing different things. And there were some kids out there busking, literally doing tap dancing. And I forget whether they had like a little jam box that they were dancing to or what. And they had the hat out there for tips, you know. And the one little kid had these tap shoes that were obviously like 3 sizes too big for him, and he probably had it stuffed with socks or something just so that he could keep them on his feet. But they were just tearing it up. And that opening line of the song, I saw little boys dancing, wearing daddy shoes. And it was like, it was kind of, it was really, I was saying it was wearing his daddy's shoes, but I shortened it. He was wearing daddy shoes. Right? And that image of that little encounter with these kids was what got it started. And what I tried to do, I like the fact that in language, the same word can have different meanings in different contexts. So the word taps in this goes from being the tap, referring to the tap shoes, to the idea of the taps that they play on the bugle at a funeral, to the idea of the tap that you get a beer out of, you know, the flow of something coming out of a tap, right? And so the song is both you know, a homage to what I feel about New Orleans culturally and everything, and also a little bit of a lament to how things that started there kind of just turned into, you know, a product that just gets sold without much sense of where it came from and what the tradition is. So it's a little bit of a lament in that regard too.
And the name of the song is, again?
Bourbon Street Taps.
All right, let's take a look at Bourbon Street Taps from John Korbel.
boys dancing, wearing daddy shoes, in rhythms you won't find on any maps. That old slate sidewalk has been slowly chipped away, but the sparks still fly from those Bourbon Street taps. Well, I heard the blues blow from a funeral parade, all parasols and feathers in their caps. That cobbled side street is a highway paved in gold when the band kicks into Bourbon Street taps. Anything for sale turns into everything for sale, and how those colors pale when no one can remember how the horn could wail. Anything for sale turns into everything for sale, and how those colors pale when no one can remember how the horn could wail. Those little boys dancing, still wearing daddy shoes, but now the tips go into some corporation hat. Ain't nothing special if every day is Mardi Gras and the suits ran off with the Bourbon Street taps. Bourbon Street taps. Bourbon Street taps. And I hear Satchmo blowing down on Bourbon Street.
Boy, if I could dance like that, I wouldn't be behind a microphone. I'll tell you that right now.
Those dancers are locals in New Orleans, Gabriel and Brianna. Marshall Woodworth, who directed the video for me, he's another local New Orleans guy, and he found them. And I mean, I have nothing but praise for everybody involved in that. I can't take really any credit for anything other than the song, in that, you know, Marshall conceptualized the whole thing and the imagery of them in the costumes from some bygone era, and me in a suit, and you know, everybody else walking the street in, you know, today's kind of casual thing. And we wanted to juxtapose the idea of that lost jazz era to what's going on now, and that's what we hope comes across in it, and the imagery in it. So
if you would like to get a copy of that, or the LP or EP, is as John has it on his website, it's John Korbel, KORBEL.com. Please go on there. You can check out all his work, what's coming up in his concerts and stuff.
Yeah. I want to also, while we're on the subject of the video, Gary, just also brag a little bit here. The video has been featured in a number of film festivals now. For instance, tomorrow I'm flying out to Richmond, Virginia. It's in the Richmond International Film Festival, and it's up for an award. So I'll get a little red carpet action Sunday night. I'm excited about that.
All
It
right.
also is going to be screened as part of a film festival in the south of France. It's going to be at the Solaris Film Festival in Nice, and that's next week. So unfortunately, France has closed the borders to COVID people, so I'm not going to be able to go there. I had wanted to go, but it's not going to happen. The whole thing will be virtual.
Well, you know, if it makes you feel any better, my friend John, you know, remember, you know, we're left with this crazy accent. Oh, yeah. Good old Cloris. Good old Cloris Leachman. I'll tell you, boy. I tell you, God.
Funny stuff. But no, so and let me share one other thing. Since we're in my studio, and I can give the folks watching at home a little glimpse of my spot here. On my wall right there.
Oh, there it is.
You can see that's the original artwork that's featured on the cover of Bourbon Street Taps, and I had it framed. It was done by a terrific artist in Philadelphia, Kirsten Knobloch, did that graphic for me, and it has now been seen everywhere.
Can't get away from
the original's right here on the wall.
Okay. All right. Since I have you on and we keep mentioning Philadelphia, sure. I know what Bobby's favorite beefsteak is. I know what mine is. What is yours?
Oh, is this the Pat's versus Geno's thing? That
yeah.
I have a very easy answer.
You're going to go somewhere else.
Jim's on South Street.
Oh, God. It's like deep dish pizza in Chicago. I lived in Chicago.
Everybody's got their favorite place, but
yeah, and everybody used to say, "What? And you like this over here for deep dish pizza, or you like it over here?" No. I have my favorite place.
It's funny. There's a place that's still there on, I guess it's 38th and Chestnut or something like that. I think it was called Abner's, and we used to play at the big club there. It's kind of in the University of Pennsylvania neighborhood there. It was called the Chestnut Cabaret. Big club, put 800 people in there in a weekend. And we used to go on the dinner break. We'd do a sound check, and then we'd go to this cheesesteak place next door. And we had given them an autographed picture of Jelly Roll. This would have been in like 1984.
It's still up there?
It's still there. I was there last year 2 years ago now, rather, for a Jelly Roll 40th anniversary concert. And we went to the cheesesteak place just to kind of retrace the old, stomping grounds. And sure enough, the picture is still on the wall. It's all faded, and the autographs are all faded, but the picture's still there. It was so cool.
If you go into some of the older comedy clubs back in the day, like Catch a Rising Star and other comedy clubs, you'll see similar pictures that are slightly faded, on the walls from Jerry Seinfeld, Carol Leifer, a couple of my buddies that are comedians and stuff. Yeah, it's really cool stuff. I think even one place had my uncle's picture up at one time because he was a well-known comic for many, many years.
Cool.
When you are preparing for a tour, a club date, whatever the case may be, what's your activity like leading up to it? In other words, what's your daily activity? Are you always rehearsing something, keeping the vocal cords going? In
all honesty, I don't have the kind of discipline in that regard that I should have. I mean, you read about these great vocalists that have these tremendous warm-up exercises they do, and all of that. And sadly, at the level that I've been at a lot of the time, things are just too hectic between getting set up, getting ready, and all that, going back and forth from maybe where you're staying at a hotel or something and being back at the gig on time and all of that, that a lot of that kind of thing is sort of put by the wayside, unfortunately. And I don't really, so I'll do some scales and some intervals. When I did take some voice lessons, I was trained to kind of do a range exercise that you start at the lowest notes of your range and do intervals and
Yeah.
keep going up until you get to the highest part of your range. And the idea being that you're able to stretch out your vocal cords. Now, one thing vocally that has changed for me, when I was in the rock bands and working particularly with Jelly Roll, my voice would get tremendously strained, and I lost really any falsetto ability, to getting up into the higher false note range. And in the years after that, and more recently, since I'm not getting that kind of strain anymore, my falsetto's back, and I'm able to hit notes that in a falsetto range that I could not have done back then. So there's been a recovery.
Yeah. And it's funny, as a voiceover actor, when I was doing it, when I was really pursuing it many, many years ago, I don't pursue it anymore because everybody and their mother, like you, has a home studio. Yours is for music, but there's so many there's thousands and thousands of voiceover artists that have a home studio, and they charge $30 a pop, and it's really not worth it anymore.
Sure.
But I used to, on my way back in the day before everybody had home studios, on my way to the studio to record, I'd go through a vocal range of, me, open up, get my voice warmed up and everything. And then I learned as I went on, and I started opening for Tom and Engelbert and people like that, a little warm liquor in here would loosen up the vocal cords a little bit.
Of course, don't overdo it, but yeah, it'll help.
Oh, I overdid it once at a session, and this was for Hanna-Barbera, and they said, Gare, you need to lay off just a little bit. And I said, come on, guys, I'm having fun. I'm playing a drunk character. I'm playing a drunk character anyway. So what's the big deal?
Yeah.
Before we get to Miss the Mystery, which is your latest CD, you have different flavors, as I said earlier in the program, a layered effect. And Latin music has a big influence with you, and you can kind of hear it in the different songs. Where does that come from? Because you're from Philadelphia now. Look, you live in Orlando now, but you didn't really grow up around Latino people. I grew up in Miami Beach, basically. I'm around Cubans all the time,
Sure. I don't know why that has always resonated with me. Even from a little kid, I love that stuff. I mean, I jokingly tell people sometimes that my biggest musical influence was Ricky Ricardo. But seriously, for some reason, any of the rhythms are just so intoxicating. It's something that just, it speaks to me. And I've always gravitated. Well, we mentioned Gino earlier, and he has a lot of Latin influence, especially in his earlier stuff. And I listened back around that same time to a lot of Kenny Loggins. He was doing stuff with heavy percussion and all that. Of course, Carlos Santana was a huge influence for me and all that. And so I have had that aspect to what I've been doing ever since the 70s, and I first started writing. Some of the original tracks from way back then had that vibe. So it's something that's always been a part of it. And I've been recently spending a fair amount of time in Los Angeles with some Peruvian musicians that I've met. There's a terrific percussionist out there that I've jammed with a couple of times now, Gina Gamboa, who is regarded throughout Latin America as the master of the cajon box. He can do things with Latin rhythms and Peruvian rhythms, and being able to get to spend time with him has been really fabulous.
Yeah. So, Stevie Wonder used to use a percussionist. He's from Miami. He lives in LA now, and Corva. I wish I could remember his name. I met him a few times. Really a nice cat. And I know Neil Diamond's percussionist. I've had him on my show, and he's been with Neil forever. Of course, Neil is no longer performing, but the Latin influence on music is, particularly in South Florida, where I grew up, is tenfold.
You can't escape it here. I mean, Orlando, where I live, it's part of our neighborhood culture here. And
I want to get to Miss the Mystery. How did this album come about? by you, and what's the video we're about to watch?
I have some little promo clips, I guess, that you have. They won't be full videos, but
no.
Well, Miss the Mystery did not start out to be a release. It wasn't in the cards. I wasn't really planning it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But first off, COVID hit, so you really couldn't do anything. I was fortunate enough to have this modest setup here, and I just started chopping wood on it. I just started putting tracks down, and as I used it to a large extent from a technical viewpoint as a learning experience, because I didn't really know the equipment that well, or the programs, or the how to get things sounding halfway decent. And I'll concede that the record does not sound as great as the stuff that I did in Nashville in these multi-million-dollar studios, but it sounds in terms of the musical ideas that I was able to put across, it was satisfactory to me, and I was proud to put it out there. So the process was kind of a result of being stuck at home. But I also have a number of really terrific musicians here in Orlando,
yes,
that I was able to get involved and have them come over and help me. You can't see it here, but I have a grand piano in the other part of the house here.
Well, I kind of figured that when I saw that you were a pianist, And
well, no, actually, I got to correct you there. My piano playing would never get me a job anywhere. For instance, on Bourbon Street Taps, that was done in Nashville, and we were fortunate to have the guy who is probably the #1 first call session pianist in Nashville now, a guy named Michael Rojas, who is amazing. So he's on that session, and I could only play like that in my deepest dreams. He's just amazing. And so, same with the stuff on Miss the Mystery here locally. Ryan Desadway is a good friend and a terrific musician. Had spent a lot of time in New Orleans. He's has a lot of that stride kind of honky tonk feel to what he does, and also just amazing jazz instincts.
Yeah.
And so he did all of the piano work on Miss the Mystery. And,
I believe the cut we're going to see, the one you sent me, is it No Better Angels?
Yes. Let's have a quick look at that, and then I've got a little bit I want to tell you about that too.
Yeah, because we got to just let it go. All right. So, No Better Angels for Miss the Mystery by Mr. John Korbel. Let's take a look.
And just when I think I've given all that I can give, you say a life less complicated would be a life less lived. And I know I would yearn for the yearning and long for the longing, and surely miss the mystery of you.
Wow.
That one was actually Miss the Mystery, but that's okay. That's the title track of the EP. And I want to give a shout out there. The wonderful soprano saxophone on that track.
Oh, yeah.
Is a young fella named Chase Pritchard, who I've jammed with at our favorite jazz hang here in the Orlando area in Maitland, a place called Jazz Tastings.
Okay.
And Chase is just finished his 4-year degree at, I think he was at the University of North Florida, terrific music school up there. And I just found out that he's heading to Europe. He's heading to Europe in November, and is going to be working on some terrific opportunities there. And really proud of him. He's a great guy, and he's got a bright future.
If you have the talent, that's another thing about this crazy business. If you have the talent, people eventually find out about you. Sometimes it might take a little bit longer than other people, but if you have the talent, there's nothing holding you back. Of course, it's nice if you have a connection or two that can tell people about your talent.
Yep.
That's also a big plus. So
he's an exciting young player, and I was so proud to have him on the record.
Well, as soon as I can find a way to get a hold of a copy of Bourbon Street Taps, that's what I want to get. And I also want to get, Miss the Mystery. But I've got to find a way to get it because there's no music stores around here that sell it.
Well, it's in the modern world, it's easily available for download and streaming on all of the various platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Music, and you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on YouTube. It's available. The video and the audio tracks are all available for you to stream there.
And you can and you go on johnkorbel.com. Can we order it there through you?
Yeah, I have hard copy CDs that you can get from me, and happy to fill those orders.
Well, once I get rid of the dental stuff, I'll probably give you a buzz on that. We'll take care of all of that. We're almost out of time. John, the final question. It did. That's what I love about this program. What has John Korbel learned about himself over the years from that young lad in Philadelphia that he really takes with him for the rest of his life? What piece of advice have you learned about yourself and how you've grown?
In spite of the fact that here I am appearing on the Gary Allen Show.
It's Mainstreet, really, but okay.
All right, Mainstreet, which is a thrill.
Thank you.
What I would say to any younger person coming up is that, especially now in the way that the music industry works, the way you have to view it is that even if you don't get to be a big star, you can always be an artist. And that really should be your
goal.
Your goal, and your if you're focused on that, and then you just have the tenacity to get your stuff out there, good things will happen.
Yeah, because I think social media has helped artists the way American Bandstand helped Bobby and that generation get their stuff out there.
Yeah. Like I said, I think if you make the aspiration to be an artist rather than to be a pop star, even if you don't get, a huge financial success or any of that, because that's getting more and more elusive.
Yeah.
You'll still get the satisfaction of doing good work. And, that's the way I strive for it now. That's the way I look at it. And as a result of, doing work that I'm proud of with these recordings and the video and everything, good things are happening. I'm in film festivals, getting performances again. And so it's basically how, you direct your aspirations that way.
I think you'll probably get a call from my good friend Jason Pollock, who has a show on this network also. He's a musician himself, and I'm going to try to make some phone calls too to get you out there with some other.
That would be terrific. Thank you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I want to thank you so much, John Korbel, for taking an hour out of your day to join us here on a Friday afternoon for Mainstreet. I also want to thank all of you out there so much for taking the time to join us. Jeffrey Mark will be back with you next week. In 3 weeks, I'll be back, and I won't have to have an empty mouth of anything. I'll be all. Surgeries will be done and over with, and I'll be back in the saddle again. That doesn't mean Jeffrey won't be hosting from time to time because other projects are coming around. But I want to thank all of you so much for taking the time out of your day. Tom Bannis, my executive producer, John Korbel, my wonderful guest and friend from Pennsylvania. And I always love to have Pennsylvanians on because we're nice people. We really are. And anyway, I just want to thank all of you out there. Please have a very safe, wonderful weekend. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.